And call the meeting to order. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Guyer.
Here.
Trustee Spurling.
Here.
Trustee Lee. Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
And Trustee Betzinger.
All right, we have a quorum, and good to see everyone. All right, moving on, our first item this evening, actually, I should state that due to the governor's executive order, we are operating this meeting in person and via Zoom. Trustee Spurling is on the Zoom call here. Members of the public have had multiple opportunities to submit for public comment this evening, either by calling Administrator Zolfel, emailing him, or showing up here tonight. And did anybody call or email you?
They did not.
All right. So I'll go into the public comment period for anybody that might be in the audience that's not on the agenda to address the board. This is your 2-minute opportunity on any topic. Going once. All right. Moving on to item B, we have Dustin Robert Kengat of 605 Melrose Avenue regarding a federal grant. Sir?
I can keep the, am I audible with the mask on? I can drop the mask?
Yeah,
Is it?
you can take it down, that's fine.
Okay. I had originally intended on simply reading a statement that I had sent to Ms. Buchanan, but there have been some developments since my initial contact with the village, and I just want to let you know that at the mark of the hour, I had sent Village President Mr. Brawley,
Brawley, yeah.
another email, follow-up email with an attachment that should explain quite a bit of my my passion, my motives, and my outlook.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item C, which is the public hearing for the Aurora Boundary Line Agreement. So with that, I'll open up the public hearing on this agreement. Is there any member of the public that either, I guess, did they have the same opportunity to submit digitally to you, Jeff?
Yes. they would
And
have.
I'm guessing nobody did for that public hearing. Is anybody here tonight wishing to address the board on the public hearing on the Aurora Boundary Line Agreement? Okay. All right, so hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to the consent items. I'll read the items, entertain a motion for approval. Minutes of the village board meeting of August 24th, accounts payable through September 10th, the building report for August of 2020, accounts receivable report for August of 2020, water production report for August 2020, cancellation of the September cow, and proclamation for Constitution Week, September 17th through the 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak. Trustee Betzinger. Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
All right, that carries 6-0, thank you. Moving on to items for separate action this evening. Item A is the recommendation of Plan Commission of PC 2020-007, consideration of a preliminary plat for an amendment to an annexation agreement to Unit 3 of the Balmorhea subdivision. The petitioner is Ryan Holmes. And then we do have one after this, but let's discuss them at the same time.
Yeah, the two are tied together, so
Yeah.
if we could just discuss both at the same time. And also Scott Sheldon from Ryan Holmes is here tonight if you have any questions. This was a request to amend the annexation agreement for Balmorhea. You might recall that originally with the overall annexation about 15 years ago, there was a subdivision plat for single-family homes of various types, but then also a smaller section of 60 townhomes that's basically at the south end of the property, excuse me, abutting Galena Road. Unfortunately, there are only two buildings, a total of 8 townhomes units constructed back several years ago, and then the development stopped in terms of the single-family attached product, the townhome product. Since that time, Ryan Holmes has acquired many of the single-family vacant lots and developed a subdivision that you approved some amendments to the annexation agreement approximately 2 years ago, doing very well with their single-family home sales, and they would like to look at a different townhome product from that was approved back 15 years ago for the townhome section. It basically boils down to a one-car garage-type unit that you've seen the elevations of in your packet, compared to what was approved as a two-car garage unit in 4-unit buildings. This went before the Plan Commission at their last meeting. Their recommendation to the village board was to not move forward with the change in the overall annexation agreement, to amend it to include the one-car product. Administratively, we can review product if it's similar in nature to what was originally approved in an annexation agreement, and approve it administratively. We felt that staff felt that there was enough difference in the product, basically because of the elevation, that we could not do that administratively, and that was the need to take it to the Plan Commission, and then a recommendation to the Plan Commission, or from the Plan Commission to the village board. So that's where we're at tonight. Like I said, Scott Shelton's here if you have any questions with regards to their proposed plan. And this would tie directly to a revised subdivision plat as well, but that can be handled separately at a future date if the board decides that it's acceptable to go with the revised product, or move in another direction. They would need some minor adjustments to the lot lines based on the product, and we can bring that forward at another time.
Thank you. Scott, did you have anything you want to add before we ask? I'm sure we'll have some questions.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. As Rich mentioned, we have a change to the elevations, hence our desire to come before you. What I just wanted to reiterate, and what I reiterated to the Plan Commission, is we've had some great success, and since we were here 2 years ago, we're pleased to report that we've sold 95 houses in the community. That's probably one of the best performing single-family communities in the greater Chicago area, certainly in the southwest suburbs. And we also have a community that we've been a part of just down the road in Yorkville called Grand Reserve, which you may be familiar with as a large master plan. We've been in there a little bit longer than what we have within Balmorhea, and have sold 90 homes in that community. And that particular community that I'm referring to is an all-ranch community. And we've seen quite a bit of demand in the marketplace around the greater Chicago area for the empty nester product. That product and that community is not age restricted. It's age targeted, and it's certainly achieved the demographic that we've expected to see. As we have continued to build and sell in that community, we've seen an ongoing interest in continuing to have master down product, but to continue to offer that at an affordable level. And this was an opportunity we felt not to necessarily bring the product down, but to serve a demand that we saw in the marketplace. And so in this case, the predominant component, as Rich mentioned, there is a one-car garage, but it is a master down townhome. So it is mostly a first floor living. There is living on the second floor, but those are extra bedrooms. So it's really meant to and designed to function as an empty nester, age-targeted product. And as we've seen in our Grand Reserve community, as we've continued to build, as prices have continued to move, we've continued to see a demand for affordable product in the low 200s, and we've seen a lot more slab purchases as well. And so we think that there's an opportunity to serve that demographic. It's not been served much in the greater market. There is quite a bit and plenty of two-story traditional master up townhomes between Oswego or Aurora, Yorkville, sort of in this Montgomery, within this greater area. And while we're not proposing to age restrict this, and so it could, certainly a first-time entrant could do it, there are other available options for that person in the marketplace. I know the Plan Commission was concerned that if a family purchased here, they may have more than one car, and, could that be a concern with parking? And, my belief is that there's plenty of those options available to that potential buyer in the marketplace for them to choose that oftentimes are even more affordable on a resale basis. And so, our intent here was to serve an opportunity that we saw in the marketplace. We are not increasing the density. As I believe it's fitting within the existing lot lines. The individual lot lines would need to be replatted, but fitting within the existing building envelopes that were previously approved with the community a number of years ago. Met with the HOA, the existing homeowners, got an opportunity to speak with all of them, I think with the exception of one, which was a rental. No concerns about the product were mentioned. I think their primary concern and desire is to see a fully functioning homeowners association. As certainly is with 8 homeowners, it's hard to fund an association properly to do the kind of maintenance and such that was initially provided for in those covenants. And so I sensed enthusiasm for them to see us continue to move forward in the community. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Scott. Questions for Scott or for staff?
I have a question. Michelle?
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
When you were speaking to the other homeowners there, was there any feeling either way about doing an age restriction on that?
We didn't discuss that, so I don't think that really was brought up to mention that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Scott while he's up there? Turn your mic on.
Okay, sorry about that. Picture on this page shows a driveway going into the garage. But on this page, it shows the one, like it says in here, that goes into the front door.
Yes.
So it is going to be available to park how many cars to the street? 2, or, in other words, 2 next to each other, 4, or a total of 4 or 6?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. We showed both options to be illustrative of what could be done if there was a concern on parking. The primary way it would come would be a single car, driveway into a single car garage. But there is obviously the space with which to add an additional drive there, should that, be something that would, the village had concern about as far as overall parking. But it's meant predominantly to have a single car driveway into a single car garage.
How many cars in that driveway in front of the garage?
There is an illustration, I believe in one of the ones that you'll see, that we show that a full-size vehicle can fit behind the garage and not encroach upon the sidewalk that's in the community as well.
But only one?
Yes, sir.
So in other words, by having the other driveway there, you're just adding really one more parking spot, right?
That's correct. Unless we, would be required to put the additional to strip in, which again, we can do.
Which then puts you short of parking in the subdivision, basically. We've had this happen before where people come with stuff, fill the garage up, and they
Sure.
park the car out front. And if so you definitely have to have the second driveway to park the next car. But then they start parking in the street, and we've got one part that we didn't do that over by Lakewood, and you try to drive by there and you can't even get a car between them the way people park, because there's just too many cars, and you're already coming up short on this by a couple cars for each little plot. So you might end up with 20, 30 cars short the way you're doing it, I think, which I think the biggest problem with the neighbors all the time is trying to get in and out of their driveways when this happens.
Yeah, I think, like I said, we have the ability to do either, and I think would be open to what the village might ask us to do there. But I think, again, the nature of the demographic that we're targeting, generally, you know, and again, what we've seen in the age-targeted communities, because it's a master down product, and with that comes some additional expense and a floor plan design that has to be desirable to that particular type of demographic, we've tended to see one, maybe two people that are in that house, and there's not, you know, kids living there full-time. Certainly, again, we're not restricting this to the point where they couldn't be.
Right.
But
If you are restricting it, it'd be different, but you're not, and yet you're putting 3 bedrooms, which automatically, 3 bedrooms basically is 3 cars. I mean, 3 people are coming. Myself and my wife is not gonna move into a 3-bedroom. We got 2, 3 cars, but we're not gonna move into a 3-bedroom house when I already got a 4-bedroom house. I mean, I'm trying to downsize, so then I'm gonna have kids come back, and I don't want my kids back. But that's the problem. I think by putting a 3-bedroom, you're not really trying to get the old people to come. You're getting the single mom with 3 kids or something like that, and you know, their kids are older in high school, they all got cars, and you're gonna have a lot of cars, I still think. I don't think you're gonna get an old person in a 3-bedroom.
yeah, I think well, all the houses that we've sold in Grand Reserve down the road, they're 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
You know, and that's been who we've attracted there, and it's been the right demographic on what we've accomplished there.
What I'm afraid of, and I'm going to tag on to what you said, Denny, is I'm afraid it's going to turn into another Mayfield Drive.
Yeah.
Or another, what is the other street?
Rebecca, Martin.
Rebecca, thank you. I like the product. I like your idea. What I don't like is the parking situation with the single garage. Because I think Denny's right. There are going to be other people that want to come in here, and we're going to have parking situations because of the way that the garage, you know, if you're doing just a single driveway, that's only 1 car, they're going to have stuff in the garage. They always do. I have a 2-car garage, and during the summer, I only get 1 car in. I make sure I can get one in, or 2 of them in the winter, but I'm going to be a no simply because of the parking situation. I don't want another Mayfield or Rebecca. We have complaints and all sorts of issues with those now. But I like the idea and I like the use. If you can change the parking situation, you'll change my vote.
And would that be a function of adding the second strip or a second bay? Because we don't have the option with this product for the second bay, but second strip we're open
I would
to.
prefer a 2-bay garage with a regular traditional driveway. I think that would alleviate most of the parking situation. The way that all the homes with the lot size in Montgomery, you know, I have a 7,200 square foot lot. I can barely fit, if I can put 2 cars in my garage and I can barely fit 4 and not encroach upon the sidewalk. But even on my street, there are a lot of people that don't do that and they'll still park on the street. And what we're trying to do is get vehicles off the street into the driveways where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, you guys make a great house, and you know that by what you sold out there, and people buy them up pretty quickly, or you wouldn't be coming back to us saying, I want to put up more houses. But we did have a problem, like Steve said, when we put Mayfield in before, that were the first ones out there, and we realized right away we got a problem. People are parking all over the place. So we made you guys go bigger, which, have you got an alternate plan to put less of them in the area, only longer driveways like you were doing? Because what you had going, you took those extra lots and you sold them just like that. So I would think you could do the same thing with these.
Well, it's a matter of achieving the appropriate market price point and demographic for that. Like, as I mentioned, I think the 2-car traditional townhome, there is a fair bit of that in the marketplace, still selling in the, you know, high 100s, mid to high 100s. So, you know, that's part of our challenge, to be able to compete against that. Whereas this is trying to attempt a totally different demographic that isn't purchasing that product that they can find in the resale market. And so that's really a lot of this attempt here, is to serve not only a need that we've seen as a result of our sales down the street, but also a different demographic to not compete with some of the resale product that's on there. Is the Mayfield product that you're referring to, is that a Master Down product, or is that do you know? or-
It's right behind Walgreens on Orchard,
It's not master down, right?
They're
No.
duplexes.
Yeah, and they're duplexes.
They're duplexes.
and they were lower end. I mean, he started out a lot lower end than what you're after, but times have changed. Are you in the Yorkville School District?
I'm sorry?
Yorkville School District?
Yorkville High School, yes.
Yeah, and see, a lot of people want to get into that school district, and they're coming to Montgomery, and you hear about it, and as fast as you were selling them, I bet a lot of them people were happy to go to Yorkville High School, and that's why I think maybe, I know you're looking at the property, the costs, and how much you can make more out of putting what you got in, but I would think you could either change the driveways longer or put single family in and you'd be in and out of there very quickly.
Yeah, we still, I mean, what we're trying to do is, we're not increasing the density, so we're trying to just really build what was, existing and already in place in terms of the number of units. A replat to single family not only would, I think, be disruptive to the two townhomes that are there, but also a significant reduction in density. So trying to find a product that works. We're currently selling 2 product lines in the single families. So we have sort of an entry-level price point that's averaging in the $250, $260 range, and then a move-up that's averaging in the low 300s. So, also getting an attached product underneath the $250 price point, because it's a townhome, is an important part of the equation too, or otherwise folks are gonna say, well, wait a minute, that's not a good value.
Yeah, I could just buy the house for that then.
Yeah.
Is the current product that's slated for this 2-car garages?
Yeah, the current
Right.
product that's
The current
built,
product, yeah.
there's 2 buildings that are built there, yes, they are 2-car garages, yes, sir.
Any other questions, Doug? I was going to go to you next anyway, so.
No, I mean, again, I have the same concerns related to the parking density and just,
Yeah.
I mean, I came out of a townhome in Naperville that had 2 cars on the end and single cars in the center. So it kind of gave you a little bit of diversity,
Mhm.
but I'm not in favor of the current product that you're showing.
Tom? Dan?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not in favor.
Okay.
Product, I'm just not in
Right.
favor
Yeah,
of
and
the
I
parking.
think I think it's
I mean,
worth
It's a
noting.
parking issue for me.
Well, and I think it's worth noting, we appreciate and are excited about the homes that Ryan Homes has built in Montgomery. Selling that many in that timeframe is a good metric for sure. Maybe you can go back to the drawing board if there's any other opportunity here. But again, we appreciate you bringing it forward, and we took an honest look at it, so,
Thank you.
thanks, Scott.
Thank you, sir.
Would you like a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? So this, again, is the very odd thing we do where we accept the plan commission recommendations. So a yes vote accepts that and doesn't do anything to the petition.
Correct.
Okay, call the roll.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger? Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
All right, so that carries 6-0. And then we'll move right on to item B, the preliminary plan for an amendment to the annexation agreement to Unit 3 of Belmarais. Anything else from staff? All right, is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve preliminary plan for amendment to the annexation agreement for Belmarais subdivision.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Trustee Marisak?
No.
Trustee Betzinger? No. Trustee Guyer?
No.
Trustee Spurling?
No.
Trustee Lee?
No.
Trustee Youngerman?
No.
All right, that fails 6-0. All right, moving on, item C this evening is Resolution 2020-022, authorizing a jurisdictional boundary line agreement amendment with the City of Aurora. Attorney Julian.
Yes, thank you. This is just a cleanup item. If you will recall, last September, we renewed the boundary line agreement, and 3 parcels were inadvertently drawn in Montgomery's side of the line instead of Aurora's side, so this just corrects with regard to those 3 parcels, and the remainder of the agreement stays the same.
Okay. Is there any actual change? Are they unincorporated parcels or?
Rich, do you know?
Are they in the village? Basically, is somebody moving towns tonight, or?
No, I think one was in Aurora and two are unincorporated, so
Okay.
it's status quo. is
Yeah.
what it is.
It's just paperwork.
It's paperwork and a correction in the legal.
Yep.
legal description.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger. Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
All right, that carries 6-0. Carries 6-0. It looks like a tennis match, 6-0, 0-6, 6-0. All right, moving on to item D, this evening, we have award of a janitorial services contract for village facilities to Echo Clean Maintenance, Inc. Director Wolf.
Thank you, President Browley. On August 20th, the village received completed bid packets from 12 contractors for the professional janitorial services RFP. As part of the requirements for the RFP, all qualified contractors participated in a mandatory pre-bid meeting. This pre-bid meeting consisted of site tours of the following village facilities: Village Hall, Police Department, and Public Works Facility. Staff has reviewed the RFP submittals and is recommending the board approve the professional janitorial services contract to Echo Clean Maintenance. Echo Clean Maintenance has previous and current experience with servicing municipalities and park districts with similar services that are outlined in the village's RFP. Eco Clean Maintenance is the lowest bidder that submitted all the necessary documents in their bid packet, as you can see in your bid tabulation sheet included in your packets. The total cost of services per month for all three facilities will be in the amount of $3,337, totaling an annual cost of $40,044. Eco Clean Maintenance is also capable of providing additional services such as floor stripping and waxing and COVID-19 disinfecting services. These types of services are not included in the scope of the work of the professional janitorial services contract, but can be completed at additional costs at the request of the village. The village has received additional disinfecting services in the past, but is anticipating to no longer request these services. This is in part to a recent acquisition of disinfecting fogger machines that have been located at village facilities. Future disinfecting will be conducted by village staff and will not require additional services from the contractor. Should the village change our position, we have obtained quotes for these services and can implement them at that time. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those at this time.
Thanks.
I appreciate Tom, when I was president at that particular meeting, when Tom brought up the price is on a yearly bid would be really high and that we should go look for some more bids. And after I looked at what he said, I said, you're right, that's almost 40 grand. We should put this out on bid. And here we had 20-some people answer, which I think really shows that, Tom, you were right. It worked. You got what you wanted, about the same price. But I think at least the public can say, yeah, we put it out for bid because it was a long-term bid.
Sounds good.
You indicated, don't anticipate continuing the top 1 cleaning and additional day cleaning that we've been doing the last couple of months, is that correct?
Correct.
With the start of the new contract.
Teresa can't hear you. You want to state that again for her?
Okay, so we don't anticipate with the start of the new contract, having this vendor do touch point cleaning or any additional days of cleaning beyond the scope of the existing contract, unless obviously there's some issue within one of the facilities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Sorry, Teresa. Any other comments from anybody? Teresa? All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Call roll.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
And Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
That carries 6-0. Thank you. Thanks, Mark. All right, item E this evening, ordinance 1888, amending the village code. This is regarding liquor license Class N, waiver of first, passage on the second.
Items E and F are in conjunction with one another. Item E is a follow-up to last meeting's discussion with regard to the village's Class N liquor license, and specifically to adjust to the petitioner's request. So the Class N liquor license previously, which allowed for the salon and spa services, required it be at private events only. So this removes that language, but the additional language is that it's required to be in conjunction with spa and salon services. So somebody couldn't go into the salon or spa just to get whatever beverage they sought. And I'm sorry, I should clarify, this is for wine also, only wine and sparkling wine. But so somebody couldn't go in and just order wine without having a service. So there's a necessary nexus now that's added into the license.
Perfect. Any questions? All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Call roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger. Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling. Trustee Spurling.
Trustee
Yes.
Spurlin.
Why don't you turn your microphone on?
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that carries 6-0. Thank you. All right, we'll roll right into item F, ordinance 1889, amending the village code to create a Class N liquor license for Purity Nail Garden.
Correct. And yeah, this item, just because there had been no licenses issued, this would amend the number from 0 to 1 to issue to the petitioner from last week.
And does this mean that they've passed all the requisite background check and that kind of stuff?
My understanding from Debbie is they passed the background check.
Okay.
Fingerprint results haven't come back yet, but they did pass the background.
It won't be issued until they pass the requisite stuff, right?
Correct.
All right, if there's no other comments, is there a motion?
Motion to approve ordinance 1890?
Second.
Go ahead.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
That carries, thank you. The last item for separate action is ordinance 1890 pertaining to local cure program. This is a waiver of first, passage on the second reading. Director Van Warren?
Thank you, President Brawley. In front of the board tonight is the village's participation, or the authorization for the village to participate in the local coronavirus urgent remediation emergency support program called the CURE program. It is for the Kendall County portion of the village, and it's through the state of Illinois. The Illinois Municipal League recommended that the authorization be approved by ordinance by the board. With the agreement, with the ordinance, the attachment is the agreement, and we are eligible to receive an amount not to exceed $435,921 from the program after we submit for reimbursements. If there's any questions, I can answer those at this time.
I'm sorry, you had a $250,000 expected reimbursement request, is that correct?
Yes.
And that takes us through the end of December or through to date? What's that, where does that number come from?
The number that we have in there anticipated that we would not get reimbursed for salaries. That has since changed, so we'll have to actually amend the actual authorization to include all of the $435,000. That change was made on by the U.S. Treasury Department on September 2nd.
Okay. Thank you.
I know that's been a little nebulous at times, trying to figure out exactly what's in, what's out, what's in. I've been on different board meetings throughout Northeast Illinois where they're having the same conversations, so. All right, any other questions for Justin? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Well, let's, real quick, is there a second?
Second.
All right, now discussion. Go
When
ahead.
I called for the motion on the last vote,
Yeah,
I called out ordinance 1890.
now we have to start the whole meeting over again.
Exactly. Sorry, Teresa. We're starting over.
I think that was abundantly clear, and looking for our attorney to agree with that. All right, everybody
Okay,
was,
so we're
nobody got
okay.
confused by that, but thank you.
But now you can't talk anymore this meeting.
Exactly, I'm done. I'm out.
All right, that was your comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
All right, and so this is, we're going to vote now on item G, which is ordinance, the real ordinance 1890. Go ahead.
Trustee Guyer,
Yes.
trustee Spurling,
Yes.
trustee Lee,
Yes.
trustee Youngerman,
Yes.
trustee Marisak,
Yes.
and trustee Betzinger.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Justin. All right, and now we got the fun stuff. So moving on to items for discussion this evening. The first one is regarding the draft TIF2 Transportation Study report from Engineer Wallers. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. So we're here this evening to talk about the TIF2 Transportation Study. Yeah.
I bet Teresa wants to see that too,
Yeah,
doesn't she?
Yes, understood.
He's got it.
Okay, Teresa, can you see that? Okay, good.
We can do that one if you want.
It's okay, sorry for the confusion here,
At least it's the current day's presentation.
but now
I
it
was at a
doesn't show
board
up on
meeting the
my
other night
screen.
Where they read off the entire consent from the last meeting.
Did it pass?
They stopped it halfway.
I was wondering when we were going to get a good PowerPoint from you,
Okay, well.
so.
You may not get one tonight, but we'll see. So, all right, thank you for indulging a little bit. I don't have the screen in front of me, but you guys do, so that's good. So this evening, we're here to talk about the TIF2 study. Colleen Jaltek from our office is here as well. She did the modeling and the bulk of the work on the project, and so she'll be responding to the technical questions. I'm gonna go through some of the basic stuff, and then we're gonna kind of tag team on the presentation. So we'll talk about project goals. I want to just, one important note that I want to point out before we get too far, a couple key definitions. The project, just to recap the project area, the traffic analysis, the projects we looked at, some of the preliminary determinations and recommendations, and then next steps. And we do envision that we're going to be coming back on several occasions to go through this study. We're going to be seeking concurrence on some items, but also direction on other items, because there's quite a few items that are going to require decisions from the board. So like a quick example is on Orchid Road, we presented costs for both what's called an urban section, which would be curb and gutter, but also a rural section, which is what we have out there now. And neither section is wrong. One is a little more expensive than the other, but it's basically a policy decision in terms of how we want that corridor to appear. So those are the type of things we're going to come back to the board and get additional direction as we get into this. But we wanted to give a bit of a summary tonight and then go through it in more detail in the future. So some of the things you know, for us to kind of keep in mind as we move forward were, you know, three basic things that we're trying to accomplish. First was to develop the traffic models. And it was, I know that trustee Betzinger had asked the question is, you know, what's the shelf life of the models? How will they be used? So we'll give you a little demonstration of what they can be used for and how they'll be updated in the future. But I think it'll be interesting for you to see the type of modeling that was done. And then really what we're trying to do is use the tools that we have, the data that we have to determine what's the best use of our TIF funds in the TIF 2 area to benefit that TIF and to spur economic development. And I know that's what everybody wants to accomplish. And then the last thing is we'll eventually provide a summary of those recommended projects and an order of how we would want to construct them. So right now, you're gonna see them in a order, but not the final order. So one thing I wanted to point out is if you look at the detailed estimates that are in the appendix of the report that was submitted in draft form, you'll note that I don't want you to have complete sticker shock. There's some big numbers in there, but we haven't done any value engineering on this yet. So an example of that is on the Auckett Road estimates, you'll see that we have fairly large costs in there for roadway lighting, okay? We may or may not need to provide roadway lighting. And then, again, that's gonna be a policy question we put back to you all. It's not required. Certainly a nice feature to have new lighting across the corridor, but there's other solutions out there as well that we can use by using existing power poles and things like that. But we wanted to at least give you the numbers so that you can decide, make that decision. There's probably gonna be more projects in the TIF 2 area than we're gonna have money at some point. So we may have to choose, again, you know, all of us want, you know, may want the BMW, but sometimes getting the Chevrolet is the better solution. So we'll get into that. And I just wanted to point out that all these cost sets will be revised once we get some direction from the board. But we felt like it was important to have all the information in the report for reference, and then we can augment that as we go forward. Just a reminder what the TIF 2 area is, quite large, and you know, just to give you kind of perspective, I know it's been a while since TIF 2 was formed, but you know, some important area of the village and a lot of potential development for future projects, especially in the Montgomery Business Center. Okay, definition time. So this is a terminology that you may have heard, and some of these you've heard before, but an important reminder here. Three things. The level of service. Oftentimes you'll hear intersection performance or roadway performance expressed in terms of whether it's performing at level C, level D, or level E, or level F. All those have meaning in the transportation world, and the next slide will show you what that equates to. But we're going to be referring to level of service quite a bit, and that's one of the primary determiners that we use to decide if a project is warranted or not warranted. So why would we want to go, for example, to 3 lanes on Auckett? Well, if we can improve the level of service in a future period of time, then we're going to want to recommend that level of service be improved, and we make those improvements. So that's an important element that we'll reference it's in the study, but also be talking about it tonight. Average daily traffic is obviously, well, it's obvious that it's the amount of traffic generated in one day. But the significance of it is that we use that amount of traffic and we calculate it into the future. So we went out to the year 2050. So we're doing traffic projections for all the roadway networks in the TIF 2 area out to the year 2050. Well, as you might expect, there's going to be a lot of assumptions that have to be made when you do that. So we're not saying our crystal ball is any better than anybody else's, and this will be an area that we're going to want to revisit over time as things develop maybe differently than we expected. So right now, if there's a building out there, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you know, that we know that there's already generating traffic, we know that, we have that, right? But there's a lot of vacant property out there, and we don't know for sure what's going to go in there. And so as that we're using right now, you know, the textbook traffic generation numbers to give us the modeling, but we can always revise that as it goes forward. So we'll get into that in a little more detail. And then the last thing is peak hour traffic.
Since you paused, I just had 2 comments. This level of service grading of the streets and the intersections, that's the same method that we use when a developer wants to come in, and we make them rank everything, their impact on the system as well. So we're holding ourselves that same standard. But the other thing is on the average daily traffic, do you look at the vacant greenfield out there and say this could develop into something industrial and you add it into there, or what do you do?
Correct, yeah, we took the land use plan that was generated by the village, and we used that land use to anticipate what the traffic generation will be. So if it's an industrial use, like an M1 use, then we use something that would be, consistent with that land use.
A question on on some of the ADT and just some of the mechanics behind it. The data used is from March of '20, is that correct? From the CMAP data, pre-COVID?
So we used CMAP and IDOT data. We also did our own traffic studies. And Colleen, what else did we do in terms of? You're gonna have to use the microphone.
Okay, we took some interim counts also on some of the side roads on Alcott, but the traffic generated was from actual traffic counts, and then we gave that data to CMAP and had them help us do projections. And that was for background traffic. And then where we looked at the comprehensive land use plans or development plans is to add site-specific data to that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, driving every day to work, traffic is not what it was. And quite frankly, I'm not sure it's going to make it even more complicated in your magic crystal ball. We've got the lingering effects of this pandemic and what that's going to do to travel and work from home over the next, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months.
No,
It's just a consideration.
absolutely. I mean, and again, that's why now that we have the models constructed, we can do additional traffic counts in the future to try to confirm that. And I 100% agree. I think we're going to see a lot of different trends that'll develop, and we'll have to be able to anticipate those, so. Absolutely.
I was at the CMAP meeting last Wednesday, and they looked at the traffic impact of COVID, and we're, at least on the tollways, about 90% the way back to where they were pre-COVID, which I wouldn't have expected. I mean, it dropped down drastically at first, but it's making its way back, but I don't feel like I work at home, so.
And if I could, real quick, while I'm thinking about it, does this data, talking about looking into a crystal ball, at some point take in consideration of Route 30 being widened between 31 West 47?
We didn't go that far, and we didn't, we can add that at a later time, and we didn't do any improvements to Orchard. We'll talk about that too. The problem, we can't control that ourselves, and that's the difficulty there, but we certainly can react to it in the future. But the traffic projections really don't change. It's just that the level of service at the 30 and Orchard intersection gets worse and worse. So it's something we can take into account in the future. And you'll see it on the simulation that we'll do here. We've got a couple of movies that we're going to show you, or simulations that you'll kind of get a sense of that a little bit.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And then last item there is the peak hour traffic. So obviously that is somewhat the criteria for, turn lane performance, and all of us observe that at the various intersections where we have wait times where they start to get intolerable when we're trying to make a left turn or a right turn, or even go straight for that matter. So those are kind of the three things that we try to keep in mind as we're looking at this. And once you know that, then you can understand any traffic study. So it's beautiful. So this is the level of service description that goes along with that. And what I will tell you is that there's probably very few intersections in the metro area that operate at A, B, or C. I think it's mostly D, E, and F is what we see in our daily travels. You might see some C out here, but most of the traffic is going to be in the D or E category, and you try to obviously make it so that it's in at least a D category if you can.
If we can aim for a D, we will have done our job.
It's kind of sad, but that's the reality, and it's all about economics and, trying to spend our money wisely and still manage traffic.
Yep.
So we developed or I should say, we constructed two models for this study, and I'm going to let Colleen explain the two models that we used.
Okay, I'm not gonna read what's on the slide, you've probably already read that by now. But basically, I'll start with the bottom one, highway capacity software. That was a software that was designed by a professor down at University of Florida, and it follows very closely the highway capacity manual, which IDOT, among other departments of transportation, use for capacity analysis. So that one is mainly for modeling one intersection at a time, or maybe a series of two intersections. Then we go to the Synchro software, which we use to build our model for the whole TIP2 area, because that software allows you more flexibility in interconnecting the different intersections and seeing how one will affect the other, more than just two intersections, so a more regional model. And the nice thing about the Synchro software is it also, through the use of a module called SimTraffic, allows you to generate a visual model. So, that's the movies that Pete's referring to. Instead of bringing the model here and possibly having some glitches while we're doing it, we just put together a few movies to show you an example of what we can find. And we're hoping in a future workshop, maybe going over some of these with you, and that way we can show you what if. What if Route 30 was expanded to 4 lanes, 6 lanes? What if Orchard Road is expanded? So we could go through some of those very easily. But for tonight, I just wanted to show you a few movies to show what we're seeing in the model.
As we mentioned earlier, we had a number of different things that we used to put into our models. The traffic generation numbers that are based on the land use, traffic counts that we did, and then we also interviewed, for example, Old Dominion to get their exact trucking schedule. So happens that they're members of MEDC, so it was easy to contact them. And they're a little unique in the way they batch their operations, so that's not exactly per textbook, so it's kind of nice to get that input from them. And then, of course, the CMAP and the IDOT traffic, which helps us with the regional traffic, on 30 and Orchard and, the surrounding area, and as Colleen mentioned, making sure the background traffic gets increased correctly. So we're not going to go through all these, but we constructed a number of synchro models. We started with, obviously, the existing conditions so that you can model against that, and then we went through a number of different alternatives. And we're certainly open to doing any other additional ones that you might request, but this is what we started with. So we actually did 9 different models, taking us through the year 2050. So, partial build out and to bring these things up. And then even anticipating the extension of Orchid to the west and then connecting to Griffin, which we think, eventually will happen. And again, we're looking out 20 years, 30 years into the future. So I think this is probably the right time to start the synchro demonstration. So I'm going to run these movies, and I'll let Colleen do the play-by-play. And I'm hoping that these come up. No. Okay, so I'm going to have to stop share and then share these, I think. So. Oops.
I can feel the suspense building over this video.
Well, it's just cumbersome to get the different screen sync to the share. So this is screen 2, so if I'm gonna share screen 1.
There you go.
Okay. Okay. What, are you guys seeing this?
I can see it in the Zoom, yeah. Can you just make it bigger?
I can.
Like this? Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Can you see it? I can't see you anymore, so. can you-
Yeah. Just start it over again.
I'll be a semi.
So can anybody see it? Actually, no. So nobody can
Okay.
see it except me. But it looks really nice. Yeah, and
So
Teresa.
we're gonna start this, and then we're live, we're going for it. Here we go.
But
Okay.
nobody can see it except me.
Only people log into Zoom can see.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, how do you get it on the big screen?
All right, now I got us. Okay.
You don't have that?
I think I have to
Come
move
on,
it
no,
to
Scott.
the other screen.
Huh? I'm fine. Oh,
Yeah, it's like that's
Yeah.
a
'Cause
second.
I want people who are on Zoom to be able to see a face as opposed to,
lead service line replacement. Got that?
Okay. Yes.
Hi,
all right,
Teresa.
yeah.
oh yeah, they're all in business. Go to your movies. No.
Let's see. Why am I not seeing the right?
You gotta click on that. That worked.
Yay. Okay. All right, here we go. Sorry for that.
Thank you, Pete. Well, not exactly. That's a little sped up because I wanted us to be able to watch a few cycles of the traffic signal without falling asleep. So I did speed it up. Basically, what you're looking at is existing traffic based on the traffic counts that were taken by our consultant that was out there. And so that is how the intersection functions right now. So, and as you see, it functions pretty well. I believe it functions at the peak hour at a level of service, I believe it is a C for, or B for Orchard Road and a C or D for Oka. And that's because your priority is your main road with most intersections. So your side road has your lower level of service. What we're going to look at next is the same intersection. We looked at 2040 traffic. And this is just background traffic, so we took our projection, or we took our traffic counts, asked CMAP to help project background traffic. This was not saying, oh, what if the western section west of Orchard is developed or anything like that. It was just,
And this is a peak hour?
this is peak hour.
Yeah. So this is like rush hour.
Yes.
Steve's falling over because all those cars on Orchard.
I'm sorry?
Steve's upset about all the cars on Orchard. It's just a lot.
No, I'm not upset, it's just a lot of them.
It is a lot.
I'm thinking about opening a tire store. All right, sorry to.
Yeah, as Jeff rightly points out, there's another connection that we're showing called Mulberry Drive. That's something we're going to talk about in a minute. But the idea that we had is that it might be worth considering a connection from the Countryside subdivision to Ockett to give those folks a second exit. Right now, they have exits only onto Orchard Road, and the traffic there is pretty horrendous. So we thought, at least let's explore it, and there's some synergisms with some other work that's gonna be done that might make it worthwhile. So that's, absent that, that's the only piece of, I guess, geometry that's different.
Now, the next, we're also sticking with 2040 traffic, number 3, Pete. Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, this assumes that there's development that's occurred west of Orchard, the NGH Farms property. We're assuming development there, and Orchard, or excuse me, Ockett extended to Griffin, Griffin extended north to Ockett. And we see the expected functioning of the intersection. As you notice, we've got a pretty long turn bay for the eastbound turning traffic. And as you notice, they do end up sitting for 1 or 2 cycles. You're definitely at a level of service F for this intersection. And again, that was making assumptions based on the land use plan that was provided for those properties, as well as background traffic growth and information that we gathered already. So what we did there, Pete, if you want to go to the next one.
Okay, what does that do to the level of service at 30 and Orchard then? When we had this cut through now, does that improve that intersection?
The level of service at 30 and Orchard, when you get out to the year 2040, it's pretty much an F.
Okay.
And that's mainly, yes, you've got some cut-through traffic going through Ockett,
Yeah.
but you've got so much traffic projected on Orchard. Of course, as the years go, we're going to need to get more traffic data and see if that holds true. But the basic projections are, level of service F for that intersection.
But if Ockett, apologize, if Ockett was extended west like it is here, that would cut down on some of that traffic that's hitting Orchard and 30, right? Those cars are coming from somewhere.
It would cut down on some of that traffic, yes.
Okay.
But overall, what we found when we were looking at the traffic data and the projections was that Orchard Road, the county's probably going to have to come back and expand Orchard Road to 6 lanes. So right now they got 4 through lanes. They're probably going to have to expand it. There's just a lot of traffic coming north-south on Orchard.
That was actually going to be one of my questions for new and unfinished business, where we were with the interim conditions. I'll ask that later.
The one before this, where you had Orchard extended, and you've seen all those cars coming from there and everything, you don't have anybody moving on Mulberry. If you open that up, there will be a lot of people will take off at Orchard, go through Mulberry to go to Ockett on a shortcut. That's almost, and you don't have anybody doing that. And that is almost for sure they're gonna do that if you open it up. That's why the Mulberry people, they'd love to have a drive to Orchard, but they say if you do, that's gonna open up all those Orchard people to make a shortcut through to save time.
Yeah. So that's why we're cautionary on, that's why we're having this discussion, and that's why we're gonna have to get some input from the residents there. It's one of the difficulties with the COVID-19 is having open houses to have that kind of input, but I 100% understand. I don't know as if we'll see it as much of a shortcut though, but that's something that we can talk about. Because you gotta go through that. The only way you're getting into, you're not gonna be able to, you're just gonna be going backwards, because eventually it's gonna be a divided highway on Orchard, and so the only access is gonna be right in, right out from Countryside subdivision.
Right,
So-
IDOT
why
wants to
would-
restrict that someday.
Why would you go through the Mulberry hassle when all you have to do is turn right onto Orchard off of 30?
On Ockett?
See, this is, the
Because it
idea,
comes in first, and if you look at the way it is, Mulberry is a fairly wide road, and you just go to the end of it, take a left, and you hit Ockett, because you're behind the gas station. I mean, there
that's
isn't,
what we want them to do.
already the people have said that's what we want. But we
Right.
said, we know that those people in Orchard will make a quick And it's bound to be. You ever back up
So
that
you-
light by the
only thing
gas
you're-
station?
No, Danny, the only thing you avoid is turning at Orchid, and if we have, I mean, if we continue to make improvements to the intersection, it's gonna be more efficient than trying to go through the subdivision and then wait to make a right turn, or I mean, a left turn out onto, or no, it doesn't help you at all.
No, they aren't gonna go left. They're gonna go
So
right
you'd
into our
be going
town.
in, just going in a circle.
He's talking people going northbound and then going east on Alcott.
They won't go left. They'll go right.
So they cut in and then they turn right
Like
like they're heading towards.
Cutting down Mulberry and then turning left to not hit the Alcott, but that would be the equivalent of up by Walmart, going down Orchard and turning by where Fifth Third Bank used to be and cutting down by Murphy to go to 30. It would take you longer than to go to the intersection and turn right.
No, but if you turn on Caterpillar Drive and take a right and go through behind there, it's a lot quicker.
There's a lot of side conversations here, so, point taken.
Yeah, so really, that takeaway is that we have to look at it in more detail. I will concede that, but we wanted to at least put it out onto the table for discussion. Yeah.
Okay, this is number 4, we're looking again at the 2040 traffic. But as you see on the west side of Orchard, the turn lanes are much smaller. What we did is looked at the potential for dual left and right turn lanes off of Alcott to improve the traffic flow. And as you can see here, you don't have cars waiting through a full cycle or more to turn left to go north onto Orchard or south onto Orchard. And that was one of the things that we're able to do, and if we have another workshop where we look at some of this, you know, you can say, well, what if we do this to this road? It's something we can do within the model and look at it very quickly.
Is that typical of most intersections? If you've got shorter turn lanes, but more of them, is it just a more efficient intersection as opposed to having maybe one turn lane, but having it much longer and having a longer time to turn? Or is it basically the same?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. I mean, definitely time-wise, it's a shorter clearing time if you've got the 2 or more turn lanes. But certainly you can set your signal cycle to clear that full lane. It's just for a cycle that we would need, it's not likely the county would do that at that intersection. So that's why we looked at potentially a shorter turn bay, but just have 2 of them.
Yeah, let me answer it a little differently too. Sometimes if you have enough right-of-way, you can put the dual turn lanes in. But if you don't have right-of-way, you might just go with a longer single-lane turn lane, right? So it's somewhat the conditions on the ground. On this site, when we started looking at, the one thing we're trying to keep in mind is if we can compact those turn lanes, we're gonna have commercial entrances to the northwest of Orchard, right? So if you have a long turn lane, that means that people exiting would have to get into that turn lane, you know, and that's just not a good conflict. So if we can make that shorter, it'll make it easier for people to turn into traffic. So, and the other thing is we run into the creek as we go further west, and so again, trying to keep that geometry a little more compact was part of the goal there, or the thinking. This is not to say that's the final design, but we're saying is that that's what we would be looking at whenever we get to that point, when we get ready to talk about intersection performance and improvements. But it allows us to do the test to see. In this case, the dual lane allows that intersection to clear faster, so it improves the level of service. Whereas the single lane, you have to wait for the whole parade to, you know, to clear. So there can be a couple of different reasons where you might consider a single lane versus a dual lane. Okay, I think that's it for the models. Yep, all right, so then I'm gonna go, this is so seamless, it's just unbelievable. So now I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint that we have. So I'm gonna stop the share there. And go to the TIF. And I need screen. Understood.
Click the big green.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so now we're back to this guy, I think. I need to back up a bit. Oops.
Nailed it.
Okay. All right, so that's just a sample of the simulations, and we can do that in a workshop format once we're connected to the internet, but it, you know, it's a little tedious and, you know, takes a little time. So we thought we'd just give you a sample of what the synchronization, or the synchro model can show. So now we start getting into tables, which I don't want to get into. These are in the report, but the point here is that we looked at existing ADT, 2025, 2030, 2035, 2040, 2045, and 2050. And we selected 2040 as kind of the design year. That's a 20-year period. So that's what we're using to look at the level of service on the highways and try to, give us some guidance. So just to give you that background. And then as we looked at applying that level of average daily traffic to the sections of Auket, and we broke Auket into two sections. The west section, let's call it from Orchard to Commerce, and then the east section, which is Commerce to 31. So when we do that, when we apply that, what you find is that in 2040, a two-lane section on Auket is performing at a level E, which would be generally unacceptable. If we put 3 lanes in, it converts now to a level D of service, which is acceptable in transportation terms. And you'll also see at the 2050 build-out, it would still be at a level of service D. When we look at the other section of Auket between Commerce and 31, it currently, or it is projected in 2040 to function at a level D. If we put a 3-lane section, as we improve that to level C, and in the future, at future build-out, it would eventually end up as performing at a level D. So, the real trick now is to determine what the right improvement is to get to a reasonable amount of performance, but not overspend our money. So the 3-lane section we felt was kind of matching up pretty well. And as you watch, as I drive, I drive Auket every day. And one of the things that you'll observe when you're there is there's a lot of turning movements into the businesses that go around there that do delay traffic along that roadway. So the 3-lane section with the bi-directional turn lane makes a lot of sense in terms of just as as a motorist, as you drive through there, you can see that that might have a benefit. So that's, again, just an example of how we use that level of service to determine whether or not the improvement is going to meet the issues or the criteria to improve the performance of the street. We looked at 10 potential projects, and I'm going to go through each one of these individually, but I'm going to show them graphically because I think it's going to be easier to get a little bit of flavor as we go through these. So item 1 is improvements to the Montgomery overflow, if you will, the drainage area that goes through there, and that's key to being able to provide drainage for Auket Road and also businesses to the north. And then number 2 is the Mulberry addition, which we'll talk about in more detail. And again, we can have that discussion of whether or not that connection should or should not be made, but we want to leave that decision up to you all, but at least provide you with the information so you can decide whether it's a good idea or not. Item 3 was the connection of Nell Road from the Route 31 side, or let's say the east side, to Commerce, so that we can have a connection from Nell Road down to Auket. And then Item 4 was the water main improvement along Orchid Road. We have an aging water main in Orchid that we'd like to see improved, and we obviously want to put that in place before we do any road reconstruction. Item 5 would be the reconstruction of Orchid Road, which would be the 3-lane section, but it would also include a major culvert crossing at the overflow. And for those of you that were around in 96 and other floods, you'll remember that Orchid Road was submerged in that flood, and it does submerge in a 35 or 50-year event. So we want to bring that roadway up so that we don't have flooding on the roadway, and we'd have a little bit better emergency service capability through there. So it would include not only the reconstruction of the road, but the raising of the road and installation of a culvert through there. And then item 6 is the water main on the east side of Orchid, and number 7 would be going to 3 lanes on that section. 8 would be intersection improvements at Nell and Orchard, which would be like the United Facilities area. 9 would be the second leg of the Nell connection to Nell and Orchard that we'll talk more about. And 10 is the extension of Edgelawn that we had contemplated in a transportation plan some time ago. And we do have right-of-way going north, but we think that that may be a project that we're going to want to eliminate from consideration. So we'll come back to that in a bit. So I'm going to run through these relatively quickly. And again, you know, this is why we think that we're going to have multiple sessions here, because there's a lot of information that we're going to provide to you, some of which you've got background on and some of which you're going to need more background on. The first one is contemplated drainage improvements in the floodway. And those consist of storm sewer improvements and what we'd call regional detention and compensatory storage facilities. So the ability to really kind of clean that corridor up in terms of the amount of nuisance drainage we have there. Some of you may remember, I know Denny and Dan would, that when I started, we were that overflow was being farmed consistently. The field tile system in that overflow is deteriorated to the point where it's non-functional. And as a result, we've got a lot of standing water. It's a nuisance for the residents that live in countryside. Our detention basins discharge to it, and we really need to provide a low flow to get that water out of there. And then if we can do some regional basins, we can consolidate some of that floodplain area and clean up the corridor. So we think that that's a worthy thing that can be considered. There's a fairly wide range of costs, which we'll get into. It just depends on the breadth of how we want to go forward. And to give you a sense of that, this is a snapshot of the overflow area. The green dashed line is a proposed storm sewer that would replace the field tile, which is the solid green line that runs up the middle of the overflow area that's failed. And then those rectangular and triangular boxes are potential areas where we could put regional detention or comp storage areas. And just to give you another way to think about it, there's areas along the fringe of the floodway, which is shown with the hatch, that are in what's called floodplain, but could be removed from the floodplain if we could put the detention or the comp storage somewhere else. So, for example, pick a location, doesn't really matter. You know, if you picked location E, which is in the Greenfield, or location F, which is in that Greenfield industrial park, if we reclaim that area, we could put a building on parcel F, but we'd have to excavate in one of the 3 locations, right? So this would all be economic development related in terms of benefit to the region. And, but in addition, like if we look at just the location of the property that's undeveloped to the north where we have the B or the B area, you have the ability to compensate for that floodplain area, but you also could put the stormwater detention for that site in one of these regional basins as well. So there's a couple of different ways we can do that. And again, it's so that we can maximize development along Orchid and put the detention in an area where we're never going to be able to build anything. So the floodway area is great for storing water, but it's not so great for putting buildings in. So that just gives you a little flavor of what that development into the floodway area would be. Second project we talked about was this Mulberry extension. Again, hasn't been sorted out in terms of neighborhood impact, which 100% agree that we need to look into that. But as we started to look at this work in the floodway, and if we're gonna build a significant detention area, we have to remove material, right? So sometimes the most efficient way is to build a haul road, get it out to the highway, and then take it away. And what we thought is, well, if we're gonna build a haul road, why don't we at least consider maybe converting that haul road into a permanent road to serve the residents of Mulberry? We'd have the base built, and we could just extend it from there. And we need to get rid of some of the fill material that we're gonna excavate. So it gives us an opportunity to take that material out. Doesn't mean we have to do it, you know, these are all optional projects, but it's an idea. We also will have a need for the fill from these regional excavations, in that if we raise the road to put the culverts in on Ockett, we need material as well. So the rule of, you know, earthwork is the least you can move the dirt, the better. So if we have a ready source for areas where we can place material, it's gonna be to our advantage in terms of keeping the cost down. So more to follow on Mulberry, but again, a concept of, you know, that we were honestly going into the project, we didn't think about until we tried to, in our head, figure out how we were gonna construct some of these improvements.
Pete, will that road go behind Rockies, that road that's there now behind Rockies? Will that be Mulberry then, or are you
Yeah.
gonna make it more by Heinz Lumber?
No, I think that's what we were thinking, is we would replace the driveway that Rocky has, so we would just move it further to the east, and then he would connect to the new Mulberry.
Okay, when Hodgman owned that street behind there, it flooded a lot. I think Rocky kind of filled it in so he could park trucks back there, but that is a big floodplain. Greenfield's a big floodplain. We used to rent that lot there, and water would get up to your knees. If you didn't get in there and get your car out of there right away, that water would come in during the daytime. You wouldn't believe where it came from. So it's a big, you gotta get some kind of, get rid of the water.
Yeah, so, and the way you think about this is we're not gonna reduce the volume of the flooding, we're just gonna move it around. So we're gonna move it into a place where we can manage it better. And you're absolutely right, the only way this works is if we have this storm sewer system in place. And now there's the 30-inch storm sewer that's been installed on the south side of Route 30 that drains through Pasadena, Bohr Industrial Park, and into the outlet at Albright. That's what we're proposing to connect to. That was all at one time a field tile system too, but that's all been replaced. So that's the only way this thing works, is if the storm sewer goes in, absolutely. So it's like we're installing basically detention basins in the floodplain, if you will, that now have an outlet. And as you may recall also, long-term, IDOT is proposing to put a 60-inch storm sewer to outlet this area as well. So that's only gonna enhance the performance of the improvements we put in. But we're not gonna fill anything. We're gonna just put fill in one place and excavate it out of another. So it's a balancing act. So there's no net fill to the project. Okay, so then moving on to Nell Road, and this would be the construction of the, this is the Nell Road extension of Commerce. So this would go through the platted Montgomery Business Center, which would be vacant property now, but it has platted lots. So once that's constructed, then obviously you can have businesses move in there. So it was always contemplated through the TIF 2 study that there would be some use of TIF funds in that corridor because of the extraordinary costs of crossing that floodplain. There's another floodplain in the Montgomery Business Center that crosses there. So this would help augment that, so that we would expect that there'd be some construction cost sharing from the developer and then use of TIF funds to construct it. So this would give us a connection now from 31 down to Ockett, but more importantly from the Public Works Building to Ockett, so you can get now to Ockett and then out west, so you have another a way to get to Orchid, so it just makes it a heck of a lot more handy than always having to go out onto Route 31, especially when you're returning. And that was, you know, contemplated as part of the subdivision from the get-go. Then kind of in sequence, we have the water main replacement, which we mentioned, and again, that's just to make things more reliable and provide additional fire flow for that TIF2 area. And then it's best if, obviously, we can put that in prior to construction or widening. And then the 3-lane section of Orchard to Orchid, from Orchid, from Orchard to Commerce. And again, the cost spread is because of either the urban or rural section. And that's not traffic of 70-10, but actually, I don't know how I screwed that up, but, oh, that's 70-10 ADT, okay, not a year. Okay, good.
Took it way out.
Anyway, and then, you know, this improves level of service, obviously, and then we have to discuss which section we're gonna use, but then also this will eliminate the flooding on Orchid that I had mentioned just previously. Then we have water main replacement on Commerce, on Orchid from Commerce to 31. And then we go from Orchid to 3-lane section at, from Commerce to 31. So improves the level of service, again, we just have to go through the same discussion on the final section. So there's some other sort of things that are related to the new public works facility if that goes forward, because we do have to change the profile of Orchid, but that can be done irrespective of this, and we've got some costs in there for putting a turn lane in for the new building. Nell Orchard signalization. Right now, we're not meeting warrants, and that's one of the things we've noticed. That facility is not operating at 100% capacity right now. So we would suspect that should be monitored and reviewed. And then if we get to a point where the signal is warranted, then we'd bring it back for consideration for TIF funding. I think it's a worthy project, but it's just not, we're not ready for that yet. One of the things that happens when you do these studies, you learn things you didn't expect you were going to learn. So for a long time, we had considered Nell Road to be extended from 31 to Orchard as a prime improvement in the village. And going into this study, we fully expected that was going to be one of the things that we were going to build. As we got into it and started talking to the Burlington Junction Railroad, we realized that the 6 crossing siding that was installed as part of the Sugar Dome makes the construction of Nell Road across those railroad sidings very difficult. And ICC, it's a public road, and ICC would require us to go through the process of getting that approved. Initial discussions with ICC indicate that it might be difficult for us to meet the criteria to install at-grade crossing there because of the curvature of the track and just the geometry that we have to work with. The other problem in talking with Burlington Junction Railroad is that twice a day for a 2-hour period, they would tie up a potential crossing of Nell Road extended. So we would have a kind of an unreliable road section there. And it's pretty expensive to make that crossing even if we could. So we're gonna come back to this in the recommendation stage, but what we gathered from this is that it may not be really practical to extend Nell all the way from 31 to Orchard as we had originally contemplated. And again, it's just by nature of the fact that the improvements at Sugar Dome really probably made that impractical from the start. So that one we didn't expect to find. The other thing is if you look into the details of the traffic study, we also didn't see as much traffic on the Nell to Orchard connection as we expected with the modeling. So we're not sure it really causes a huge impact in terms of regional traffic. And we can talk about that in more specifics at a later meeting, but that was one of the other conclusions we came to. Another item that we're gonna make a recommendation on is the Edgelawn Extension North. When the subdivision Montgomery Business Center was originally proposed by TCB, which has now been liquidated, I believe, we contemplate extending Edgelon South to connect to Nell Road. And the thought there was it would be another area for a traffic to exit the subdivision. We were planning on restricting it to automobile only because it goes through the sports complex. But that was, pre-2008, and a lot has changed since 2008. So as we look at it today, we're saying, is that really worth an expenditure of $2.4 million to put in a roadway that doesn't really give us a lot of extra benefit in today's world? So we think it's really limited value to TIF 2 from an economic standpoint, and we free up 66 feet of property that can be redeveloped into an industrial property. So as we look at it now, the Edgelon extension doesn't seem to be a good investment. And, that's one of the things that this study was intended to derive, was where do we spend our money? So I'm not gonna go back through these, but, just to recap, these preliminary determinations is that we don't think extending Edgelon at this point, after, this is, 14 years ago, or, 12 years ago, when we looked at the extending of Edgelon, and in a lot of perspectives, things have changed, but economically, things have changed significantly. And given what's been developed on the Aurora University site, I'm not sure we see a real benefit to extending it. So that's number one, takeaway from this evening. And then the second is that we're really not going to be able to complete that Nell Road extension, and we'd probably eliminate Project 9 from consideration right now. We can always bring it back, but again, it's about priorities and, which projects we want to do first. So I would like to hear some, and I'm hitting you with this cold now, so I don't really need, I guess, anything formal, but if you have any comments on these two items, be happy to entertain those now. And if you want to give that some more thought, we can revisit it in a couple of weeks. So.
The extension of Mulberry is, if I'm not mistaken, and Dan, you and Denny would probably know, is that subdivision serviced by Montgomery Countryside Fire?
Yes.
So currently they either have to go out to 30,
Yes.
out to Orchard, or go up Alcott to, so.
It's tough on the busing. When you bus kids in there, one way out, it takes a long time.
Okay, so I'm happy that that's included in this.
Thank you for not answering either of his questions. So the two that you're looking at, no, these two. Yes.
Okay, I thought it was in general.
Well, anything's fair game.
I'm kidding,
so.
but yes. So these two, I think it makes sense to put these way at the back of the list. I think Aurora University would be very supportive of that. I don't see a whole lot of economic driver in doing either of these, as you stated. And I'll go off the list now, like Doug did. The stormwater type project, where we're creating a regional basin, moving floodplain around, we're actually creating developable property that, absent the village doing a project like that, I'm not sure that anybody ever does, and none of those parcels ever get any bigger or developed. And all the other, the water main part of the projects, I would hope that we have, or at least we could get that funded via our water. Is that how you're planning to fund that, or was it gonna be a combination of?
Again, that's where we're getting into policy discussion. We haven't really gotten there yet. It could be funded by the water fund, it could be funded by the water and the TIF fund, it could be funded by the TIF fund. It would be
Or by general fund, or whatever.
Whatever you guys want.
Yeah.
So that's to be determined. I think it's identifying projects was the first order of business, and then we can start talking about how we're gonna fund them.
Okay.
So.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, eliminate 9 and 10.
I agree. If Pete is recommending we eliminate those or put those on the back burner and hold them, let's do that.
Okay. The only reason I'm pressing on that is that the developer is interested in moving forward on the Montgomery Business Center, and if they replat that lot to free up that 66 feet, it just gives them more room to to be able to, you know, sell to somebody, and I think that helps the village, so, okay. All right, so next steps is we want to get into this in more detail after you all have had a little more time to think about things. And we'll go through specifics on the sections on Orchard, or excuse me, on Orchid, whether it be the urban or rural sections. We'll get into more of the details on the flood control and drainage improvements. There's a future report that'll be coming out on that to give you a little more background on that. We'll talk about project sequencing, and then we would eventually hope to finalize the study to reflect the policy decisions that are made, either by addendum or a second, publication.
And on the Alcott stuff, I know that we're not discussing that tonight, the rural versus the urban cross-section. I saw the range in the costs going from 4 something to 7 something, other than the $2.5 million increase. Is there any benefit to the urban section that I'm not thinking of?
It's a little more compact in terms of right-of-way acquisition.
Okay.
So if we go to a rural section, we're gonna need more space to be able to
Yeah.
transition slopes from the edge of the pavement down to the existing properties. So it's likely we would need more right-of-way.
Okay. So we're
That
gonna
would
talk
result
about,
in more maintenance, correct?
Yeah, so, there's more storm sewer and, probably less parkway maintenance is what you're referring to, trustee Guyer. Yeah, absolutely. And, it's, again, this is 100% policy is, what are we looking to see that corridor appear as into the future,
okay, we'll talk about it when you bring it back.
I have just a question I want to throw out there. Can we use the IRP funds for this as well? Because we're looking at roads, and that was meant for roads and the curbs and things like that. Is that where we can get some funding for this as well?
Absolutely. It could be any combination of TIF funds, water funds, IRP funds, and I think that would be appropriate to make there may be some of the projects that have been identified tonight that you feel are appropriate for IRP. Maybe, at least a percentage of that. So for example, Mulberry, we can say that it has economic benefit to the TIF because we can use it as a haul road and we can use it to put some of our spoils on it. But converting it to a permanent road may be a portion that could be IRP funded that maybe wouldn't have a lot of economic development, economic benefit for the TIF area. So a combination, trustee Sperling, I think is a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Do any of these, and with any of this, you know how sometimes we use some federal funds, sorry, I don't know all your acronyms, like Lakewood Creek Drive was able to be, would this qualify for some of that funding as well? I know that's sporadic or every other year.
Well, no, that's an option that we can look at as well. The question is gonna be whether or not, the answer is yes, and we would look at that as we move forward. Once we, I think, get to more clarity on the projects we're gonna do and in the order we're gonna do them, then I think we'll start talking about specifics of funding, whether we're gonna blend IRP funds, whether we're gonna look out there for STP funds to find something that might match up. There's also, so, I mean, the answer is yes, we'd certainly explore those possibilities. Oftentimes, depending on what we're trying to accomplish and in what order, we may want to avoid using some of the federal funding because of possible project delays that ensue waiting for your phase 1, phase 2 to get approved. So, because I think some of this may be opportunity driven. In other words, if we have some businesses that want to do something on the north side of Orchid, we may need to move quicker on some of the improvements along Orchid than if we want to put it through a phase, federal program. So that's it for this evening. Thanks for your patience, and we'll schedule a meeting to come back and discuss this in more detail as we kind of refine things a little bit ourselves.
Awesome. Any other questions for Pete or Colleen? Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you, Colleen.
All right, it's been a little while, so how about we take a 5-minute break before our next presentations, and we'll go from there. I'm not gonna.
Let's see if I can get this to.
Hey, and I just want the record of that. Sign some stuff. Don't bring this public, and we've never got. Are you looking for my signature? No. Gladly.
Yeah. Yeah, you can, no, you're good. No,
Yeah.
it'd be good for,
Whatever you don't want. First two CMAP meetings after COVID were just a nightmare. And they're like 100, they have AV people. That's all they do at night. So I saw Colleen in the back, and I didn't recognize her. She had her mask on. And I was outside looking in, so I feel bad.
Justin, sorry, we're gonna get this
So
all.
I think that all the business to not bring up.
Okay, let me get rid of this copy for you. Okay, I think, oh, do the stop share too. There you go. Okay, so now you should be able to start fresh.
Okay. Thank you.
I drink a lot of water all the time. I didn't even drink it before I came, so.
What about it?
You don't give those to you.
Okay.
I took mine.
What's the sign?
Yep.
Here's my pen.
Justin, what's our reserve now down to? It's not 40% anymore, is it?
Yeah,
Huh?
it's still over 40%.
Oh, that's good. I know sales tax has been good, so.
The last couple months has been really, really good, which is,
We have the right places that everybody goes to.
yep.
Menards, Sam's Club and Walmart and Farm and Fleet, well, those places are just Benny's.
Benny's, yeah,
You don't go there by 8 or 9 o'clock,
it's crazy.
and they're out of things like, you couldn't get Gatorade anywhere around here. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
What's left? Two items for discussion. COVID update and then lead service line replacement program.
I'm ready to go home. They've been cleaning out of Chris's basket, so behind her desk she has refills.
Oh, yeah, this is like the reject club right now.
All right. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, he's in Oswego now, married.
You know what, I saw she changed her name on Facebook, but I didn't know that they had gotten.
Yeah.
What is this weird thing on? It doesn't close. All right.
You guys would take it and get it sent in.
All right, we ready to roll? All right, so I'll call the meeting back to order and move on to items for discussion B, which is our COVID-19 discussion. Director Van Born.
Thank you, President Briley. As we all know, in the last 6 months, COVID-19 is, there's been a lot of changes. our initial response to the economic uncertainty was to provide a list in late April where we could delay certain expenditures. We've been able to obtain additional data over the last 6 months and wanted to give the board an update. The approved fiscal year 2021 revenue budget was $11.8 million. The stay-at-home order and temporary closing of many businesses has had an impact, and we are looking at projected revenues of 11.1. Major decreases in the revenues. Number one is state sales tax. Of $331,000. We had projected a loss back in April of $575,000. Developer reimbursement of professional services. And you'll see this actually on the expenditure side as well. Less expenditures for engineering and legal. State income tax. Illinois Municipal League puts out estimates on a quarterly basis, and they're showing less state income tax. That's approximately $129,000. And then donations to village events, Montgomery Fest, River Run, et cetera, has a decrease in revenue of approximately $90,000. You'll see that on the expenditure side as well. So our general fund expenditure budget was 11.6 million. And because of delay in certain expenditures that we made, we're looking at our projected expenditures through the end of the year to be $11.1 million. Major decreases in expenditures are, one is the delay in hiring staff. Employer health insurance contributions. We reduced the insurance contributions that the village is making. Legal and engineering. This is the other side of the developer contributions. And then community events of $101,000. So if we look at the two numbers, we're looking at about a $2,000 surplus through the end of the year. This includes reinstating items from the hold list related to employee hiring, vehicle purchases and replacement, equipment purchases and replacement, and then other items from the list will be evaluated as on an as-needed basis. If there's any questions from the board?
I do have one question. In our expenditures, you noted the delayed in hiring staff, but the employer health insurance contributions, you mentioned that the village reduced our share. How did we do that?
So we have in the insurance fund, we have a balance in there high enough that we are able to reduce that this year.
Gotcha. So we
would contribute from the water and the general fund to that, but we have enough of a balance built up there.
got
that
it.
We could reduce our,
So we didn't increase the share that the employees are paying. That's
No.
all I was asking.
we're just using surplus that was in the fund.
Okay. All right. And I know we put, do you have the dollar figure for what we put on hold that you'd be looking to unfreeze at this point? Basically everything?
What we're recommending, or what we've been doing is we've.
Grab a microphone. Or you can sit where,
I'll come up here. I like standing, my back can't take the sitting anymore. We're not recommending unfreezing that whole list. Really what we've started doing is moving ahead with hiring whether it's replacement or new hiring, vehicle purchases and equipment purchases. Other items we'll review on an as-needed basis. Some of them may stay frozen the whole year, depending on what they are.
Yeah.
But those are the big three that, kind of will help operations keep going the way we want, so.
What about training, certifications?
We have been releasing that. Again, we kind of look at what the training is. Like I just signed off on some police officer training today. So really just, we're reviewing it as we go and see what it is. It's something that's needed. So. And Justin has factored that into us letting go some of those other items also as the year goes on. That's factored into the 11 million in expenditures.
Okay.
So, good news is, well, we're seeing a decrease in revenue. We also have seen a decrease in expenditures by our actions, and we should still have a balanced budget and be able to do the things that are important for us to do, so.
And you guys feel confident that we're at a point past basically the stay-at-home orders where you've seen our sales tax numbers, income tax, or whatever it is that could fluctuate, rebound enough to where you're confident the rest of the year could be okay?
Under current circumstances.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at, is not that I think there will be another stay-at-home order over the winter, like, you don't know that could happen, I guess, but.
Based upon what we see right now, what we've seen in sales tax over the last 2 months, this is what we're thinking is going to happen. If there's another stay-at-home order, if there's something else that comes through that we don't see right now, that
Sure.
could totally change.
So this will be the first time that we ever ask you to spend the budgeted funds slowly over time
gonna say
on an
that's-
as-needed basis.
That thought is partly why we're not releasing everything off the hold list. And also, again, we have a healthy, fund balance if we would need to, so.
Yeah.
Just for this reason.
Okay.
Proceeding, but conservatively.
Any other questions, comments for Justin or Jeff? Okay, thanks, Jeff. What's my agenda? Okay, last item for discussion is the lead service line replacement program. Director Wolf?
Thank you, President Browley. As you are aware, the village recently completed a replacement of 106 lead service lines within the village of Montgomery to residential properties. This project began in fall of last year and was completed last week by the contracting company Brandt Construction or Brandt Excavating. Brandt staff did an excellent job of not only performing the work as per the plans, but also did a great job in coordinating and scheduling with each property owner to gain access into the property to perform the necessary work for this program. Through the process, I was in contact with members of Brandt Excavating and EEI to coordinate schedules, materials needed, and issues that needed immediate attention, as some foreseen issues did arise throughout the project. This project could not have been as a success without the planning and construction management of Engineering Enterprises. Julie Morrison from EEI did a great job with planning and managing this project, as well as all the members of EEI who played a role behind the scenes to make this project a success. I also want to thank all the members of EEI who were on site during the course of construction, not only to coordinate, but also resolving issues on site and consistently staying in communication with my staff and myself to ensure that the project moved along swiftly and successfully. I am excited that with the direction of the village board, we were able to provide new water lines to our customers that had existing lead water service lines. The village is one of the first communities in the state to complete this lead service line project and should be very proud of our accomplishments. With that, at this point in time, I would like to turn it over to Engineer Wallers to give you guys a brief presentation.
Okay, thanks, Director Wolf. We're going to go through some quick things on the lead service line replacement program. By all accounts, on all metrics, it's been a great success. Just to give some background on how we got to where we're at, in 2017, as a requirement of Public Law 0922, EPA required all communities to inventory their water service lines. And in doing so, the village identified a number of lead service lines. It was at that time that the village president and village board directed staff to determine what would be the cost to replace those lead service lines, and that really initiated the project, as you may recall. And that direction was given to Director Wolf. Something that we take for granted, I guess, is how water gets to our homes. And this is just a graphic that shows how water gets into the homes and really the ownership of that. And conventionally, the village owns the main that's in the street and also the portion of the water service up to the curb stop, which is at the property line. And then historically, the ownership of the service line from the B-box or the curb stop to the house has been the responsibility of the owner. And that's going to continue after this project. But as a result of the extraordinary cost to replace lead service lines, the village board wanted to move forward with this project and help the homeowners escape that cost to replace that. It's a significant cost, anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 for each homeowner. So that was one of the goals of the projects, was to accomplish this with as little cost to the homeowner as practical. So also, just to recap on a few things, through the process, we identified 106 lead service lines. Again, as I mentioned, the village committed to going from main to meter at no cost to the resident. And then we started the notifications and the community meetings. And as you get into these projects, you start to understand how difficult they can be. So there was a number, I think 87 of the 106 homes were slabs. So we're thinking about how we're going to actually do those replacements. You know, what's the practical way to do it? So it turns out that we used directional drilling to do that. But, you know, 10 years ago, you probably couldn't have, the technology didn't exist to be able to pinpoint in the drilling apparatus to go under these slabs and come up at the exact location of the meter. But thankfully, we had that technology available to us today. And we'll get into that in a bit, and we've got another video. This is a movie night, you know. So, but then as we got into it and we were starting to try to figure out how we're going to pay for it and how much it was going to cost, we did identify that the Illinois EPA did have what they called a forgivable loan or a grant for replacement of lead service lines. So the village was able to capitalize on that. We were the second community in the state to get one of those grants. It did add some time to the project, but obviously well worth it. So, and again, just to kind of give you a recap of things, the project was awarded to Brandt Construction for $1,060,000. Generally, they used horizontal directional drilling to do the replacement. We had 19 basements and 87 slabs. And we did have a slowdown because of COVID-19. Obviously, you know, there was some uncertainty as to whether we could go into homes or not go into homes during the shutdown, obviously, and, you know, people were concerned, rightly so. So we basically took a 3-month project shutdown and then started back up once the state opened up. So it worked out real well. Some of the work that went on, one of the things, again, one of those kind of unexpected things that you don't realize until you have to actually perform work. When we went to consider how we were going to come up through the slab, the time frame when these homes were constructed, oftentimes they had some asbestos-backed tile installed in their laundry room or in their meter, in the area where the meter was at. So we had to first identify whether it existed or not, and then we had to have a remediation program for that specifically. So we had contractors that were charged with being able to make sure that that was done properly, that the tiles were, they were contained with a vacuum system, and so that we didn't have any asbestos fibers going away from the construction site. That was managed ahead of time, so that when we actually went to do the main, the service line protection or replacement, we were ready for that. So that was one of the sort of nuances that I don't think any of us would have considered when we first started contemplating the project. But that went really well. We also worked out a system by giving the residents a reimbursement program, because we didn't, I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with the asbestos tile. It's only when you start drilling into it, it becomes an issue. So rather than trying for us to try to match tile or to repair it, we gave the residents an allowance program so that they could have their laundry room or wherever their meter was at retiled or recarpeted or whatever it might be to their liking, and then they would submit that as a project cost to the village. So we thought that was a good way to handle it. That way we weren't trying to coordinate with each of the homeowners, and they could hire the contractor or the vendor that they wanted to do the work. Here's some construction photos. This is actually from the final service that was done on River Street. On the right is the directional drilling machine. I have to say the Brand Construction crew was really a pleasure to work with. Those guys were very easygoing, easy to work with, very conscientious. A couple of the workers posed for me when we were out there, but they were really great guys and did an excellent job. I don't think we could have got a better contractor. The one on River Street was interesting in that we had to go over the, so the main is on the west side of the road on River Street, and that's where they're excavating out to the main to be able to make the tap. But in order to get the drilling machine room to go down over the 69-inch interceptor sewer that's on the east side of River Street, and then dip down and go through and into and under the basement and then come back up, they had to stage the drilling contractor on the park side, if you will, of the project, and then drill under, over the sanitary sewer, and then drill it down. So, and then they were able to hit a circle of about 1 foot diameter on the inside of the person's basement. So they drill it through, and then what happens is we pull the copper back through that with that drilling machine. And then they just mortar up the connection, and they're pretty much done with the installation, so. Yeah, there's a lot of obstacles. So, you know, again, this technology is pretty amazing, and we'll go through it here with this video. I'm hoping this is gonna work seamlessly, but given what's happened tonight, I'm not gonna guarantee it, but we'll see if this goes.
This
Okay,
video
so
will show
great.
you the
So it's on
process
my
for
screen, but it's not on
water
that
service
screen.
using a horizontal drilling machine.
Oh, God.
We have broken down
Okay.
the process into 5 phases.
So I'm gonna do, give me a second here, this is,
Phase 1 consists of drilling to the depth of the existing water main.
I know,
and
it's
installing
just a
the tap
matter
for
of,
the new water service.
exactly.
From there,
That's
the
the
drilling
problem,
continues
isn't it?
towards the house at the depth of the new water service.
First of all,
Yeah, if there, from now on, if there's gonna be more than 4 videos, popcorn
Phase
needs
2
to be
begins once the
distributed.
drilling machine
you know,
reaches the house.
I thought about
For a
that too, because
basic
in the
wall,
past,
a
when
hole
we've
will
had
be
these
drilled
long
directly through the
discussions,
foundation
I've
wall
generally
precisely
brought
on the
some
new water
food.
service
But with COVID, you know, things have changed, so you gotta be careful now.
Those shoes are way too clean.
You're forcing me to do more than one thing at a time, and that's never good for me, so, I'm gonna stop share here.
During phase 3, the new water service
Look-
pipe
look
is
at those
connected to the
shoes. They're
drilling machine
spotless.
and pulled
Been
back
wearing
through
them
the
months.
basement wall towards the water main.
Okay, now.
Phase 4, the water service finally reaches its destination at the water main, where it can be removed from the drilling machine.
Oh, thank you. There we go.
You're gonna start doing Zoom tutorials soon, right?
Yeah, well, you can see how seamless I
Finally,
am.
in Phase 5, the
that's for
water
sure.
service is connected to the water main along with the shutoff valve
Is it
and
the
prepared for
internet? Yeah,
inspection
check
and
the
backup.
internet.
There we go, okay.
The water meter is connected inside the
It's over,
house
so.
along with the process.
Any questions?
Okay, now we got all that put together. Oops. So now I just need to do the,
There we go.
so theoretically, if I do this one. Okay, here we go.
For replacing a lead water service using a horizontal drilling machine. We have broken down the process into 5 phases.
I'm at 100% volume.
The YouTube one, turn that
Phase 1 consists of drilling to the depth of the existing.
Lower left.
Lower, yep.
It's not plugged into the audio, it's just picking it up on the microphone.
Yeah.
That's right, Pete knows what it says.
So we'll have to give you the play-by-play, so I'm gonna start it over again. Okay, so obviously that's the drilling machine that's set up.
Teresa, can
and-
you hear it? Well, you can hear Pete though.
This
so.
video will show you the process for replacing a
So,
lead water service using a horizontal directional drilling machine. We have broken down the
Yeah,
process.
so you can hear
into 5
this a little bit in
phases.
the background, but this is the graphic you've seen before. It's the water main, and Mark's gonna give the play-by-play.
Phase 1 consists of drilling to the depth of the existing water main and installing the tap for the new water service. From there, the drilling continues towards the house at the depth of the new water service.
I know.
Phase 2 begins once the drilling machine reaches the house. For a basin wall, a hole will be drilled directly through the foundation wall
Predict where it's
precisely
gonna
at the
come,
new
and they're
water service
actually gonna
location.
catch the debris as it falls from the drilling machine. So it's pretty incredible. They have it's a two-stage process. The guy on the drilling machine controls the drill head, and then there's another person
During
that
phase
has
3, the new water service pipe
a
is
sensor that
connected to the drilling
helps
machine,
direct
pulled back
that
through the
boring
basin
head.
wall towards
So
the
then,
water.
once they make the connection into the house, then they feed back the copper pipe out that same hole, and the drilling rig pulls that back out, all the way out to where it's connected to the water main.
And were these all the same
Phase 4, the
size?
water service finally
Yeah, they
reaches
were
its
all
destination at the
same
water
sizes
main,
that were
where it can be
originally
removed from the
constructed,
drilling machine.
1-inch service lines, yeah.
Yeah.
So. And then they pull back the copper. They use kind of like a Chinese finger handcuff to hold the copper and pull it back through. And that's pulled all the way
Finally, in
back
phase
through.
5,
Then they
water
make
service is
set the
connected
new
to the water
B-box
main
and
along
make
with
the
the
new
shutoff
connection
valve
to the
and
main
prepared for inspection
at that
and backup.
time.
The water meter is connected inside the house.
Then
along
we
with any
took
necessary
Mark's
repairs
guys
to the
then came in,
foundation.
installed the new meter
Thank you
with
for
new
watching our
shut-off
video
valves and everything. So
demonstrating the
now,
process for
and new
replacing the lead water
MXU, so we've
service.
got all the latest metering, and all that stuff was done, so, anyway.
And, nice. And how long were they down?
This video,
Yeah, just accept. So, and how long were they down, water at the house?
Probably, 4 hours generally?
typically less than 4 hours for connection.
It's awesome.
There was a lot of intricate workings too involved in this, because one of the aspects we came across too during the planning process was the fact that former building code allowed and permitted most homes' electrical systems to be grounded to the plumbing system. So obviously with new standards and the work that we were doing, that kind of threw another wrench in this whole process for us. So we had to identify a way to reground all the electrical systems. So one of the things that we did was we installed grounding rods inside the homes to
to be able to secure that electrical connection, so, or the ground connection, I should say, for the electrical panel. So, again, like Pete had pointed out, there was a lot of small little nuances that throughout the process of, outlining this project came apparent to us, and things that we had to work around. So, again, I think Pete hit it on the head. We had a great contractor that did a really good job. Fortunate for us, too, I think that the residents of Montgomery who were able to capitalize on this program saw the benefit, too, because we really got a much better response after post-COVID than what we anticipated. And I think that was due to the fact that people understood the value that we're getting and the direction from the village board in trying to, like Pete had said, take away those extraordinary costs to the residents and be able to provide that to them. So I think that was a huge part of us being successful in this program, too.
Over time, I think that this, just to put this in perspective, City of Chicago has 380,000, estimated 380,000 lead service lines. And I saw an article in Cranes that they're setting aside about $10 billion, or they're looking at $10 billion of cost, they think, for that project. They're looking at that. We're right at the start of lead service line replacements, but over time, I think it'll be more commonplace, but we broke a lot of trail with this project, with the directional drilling, with the having to sort out the asbestos, the grounding rods, which nobody would have, some of the stuff you can't think of until it's like, duh, well, why didn't you think of it? Well, sometimes until you're doing it, you can't anticipate all that stuff. But the group was able to overcome all that and solve those problems pretty quickly. But I think it was a great service to our residents, because while you could theoretically contract for this work individually, the mobilization, the setup, all the things that we can get economies of scale to, the individual homeowner can't get. So I think it was, really a good project that we were able to do for the residents. And, thankfully, we were able to get a significant grant from EPA to fund it as well. So it worked out really well. And now, to the best of our knowledge, we're lead-free in the village, so.
It's awesome. Yes, and I guess one of the points that I always make, and you kind of said that the bigger picture is, and again, there's legislation that's being discussed every year mandating the replacement of this stuff. And I remember staff came to us very early on in this and said, hey, here we think we can set aside a chunk of money every year. We can do X number of these every year over the next several years. And my first question was, well, who are you going to do first? Who is the guy that gets to get done now? Not that there was any risk to anybody if their water chemistry hadn't changed. But that really spurred the thought of, hey, why don't we get in line or be the first or second ones in line to get some state funding, a large chunk of this. And the other aspect too is, we're not required to go past the curb stop. So we could have just done the service lines in the road, move on with our lives, and tell the homeowner, you got to get this replaced. But the reality of some homeowner contracting this out by themselves and doing it in a safe way would be impossible. And I'm not sure, are you even allowed to do partial anymore per IEPA? So you need to go all the way in anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So as far as, we took it to the finish line, and then I showed up 3 days later for a picture. So everything works out.
Nice.
But again, I appreciate this board, Pete, EEI, Public Works, Brant, everybody involved you literally had all of the hurdles up against you with COVID and going in. I mean, imagine, I remember having that first call with staff during COVID. Hey, should we still do the lead service line stuff and go into people's homes right now? And it was like, holy cow, no, you can't do that right now. But we ramped it back up, and to get all of these homeowners to agree when the government came knocking on your door to let us replace your lead service line and go into your house, mess up your basement, shut down your water. And I think it took some convincing, but.
Well, and it's really a team effort, because we had the building department, Mike Klupar and those guys helping. I know that, obviously, Public Works guys were instrumental. And, this started when Jack Rosensteel was here. So, he was very helpful in getting the project going too. So we had a lot of people that helped get this through. yeah, it took probably more energy and coordination than any of us thought would, but, you know, the outcome is, it came together, and it was a really good effort, so.
I remember having a conversation about this down in Springfield. We
Yeah.
were down there.
Well, the concern, yeah, and if you remember, some of the initial proposed legislation for lead service line replacement was to replace all the lead service lines in Illinois in 10 years. And while that's, you know, obviously possible for, if you only have 100, when you have 380,000, and then you have communities like Elgin and Rockford and Joliet that have thousands, you know, it becomes more daunting just from the fact that, you know, there's not enough plumbers, there's not enough contractors, there's just limits on the physical ability to do all that work in that prescribed time limit. So having control of your own schedule was very important to the municipalities, and I think that's one of the things that was, you know, the legislation was stalled because there wasn't enough funding, but at least we had the ability to control our own destiny. So I was happy to see Montgomery move forward and get the work done and get the grant, so.
Well, we made that decision to go all the way to the meter before they changed the law, because it was just the right thing to do. We had made that financial commitment early on, and I know I've talked to 2 aldermen from surrounding communities, several towns over, and we're trailblazers with this. They're envious of the fact that we were able to jump on this and get this fixed for our residents so quickly. So my hat's off to staff, the contractor, everyone involved, and the board for pushing it through.
So I don't know if we know for sure if we're gonna have a water con in March, but for those of you who don't attend regularly, that's the convention of all the water professionals in the state. Mark's usually there, people from EER are there. But Mark and Julie are gonna be doing a presentation on the lead service line replacement if that goes forward, so we'll let you know in case you wanna make the trip down to Springfield, so. No, it is not.
Do you guys dress up?
There may be there could be an equal number of nerds, I'll give you that, but it's a different, it's a different type of nerd.
Yeah, we're water nerds. It's quite different. I'm already signed up. I already got the hotel. I'm going, COVID or no COVID. And
I think
on
the
a side
term's
note too, there's.
aquadork, it's
Yeah.
not water nerd.
This Thursday, Kane County Water Association, Jeff Freeman and Julie Morrison are doing a presentation on lead service. It's gonna be via Zoom, so. So I'm gonna
That
watch
is
it.
the perfect segue, by the way. I was gonna go into newer unfinished, and I was gonna say that we should probably have Jeff Freeman come and talk water at some point in the near future, which I think we do have planned, don't we?
He's dying to come, I'll tell you, so, yep, we're gonna plan for a presentation in October. We wanna talk about, some updates to, alternative water supply in the region, and just give you guys a little bit of information on what's going on in the region and what do we need to look forward to, so, yep.
Awesome.
Snacks will be required for that meeting.
Yes.
If you're gonna Freeman us.
And I'm gonna need some videos and at least 2 different PowerPoints, okay? It's exciting. All right, thanks, Pete, really appreciate it. So, anything else under new or unfinished? Steven?
Yes, I have.
He raised his hand.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Sorry, Steve.
Wow.
We had the MEDC golf outing this past Thursday, and it was fantastic. So I want to acknowledge Shar and all of her hard work. We had 94 golfers, which is, in these times with everything that's going on, a testament to her hard work and reaching out and getting everybody to come. And I just got the numbers from her. Sponsorships were up. I think that's a testament as well to the times, because people haven't been able to spend money where they normally did. And Shar was able to tap into that. And even though we couldn't get any tickets to any of the sporting events and raffle them off, she did a fantastic job of getting raffle prizes. And just again, thank you to all of the sponsors, all of the staff that came and volunteered and helped out, and just Shar for all of her hard work. So,
Thank you,
Thank you,
Shar.
Shar.
and finished. The Packers are on their way for the next Super Bowl. I just want to show those guys down at that end. Thank you.
All right. Orchard Road interim intersection improvements, where are we with that?
Yeah, so that project was under design by the county. They were applying for an ITEP grant. I believe they received the grant. I'm going to have to contact the county to get a schedule on construction because I don't know what the projected letting date is. So let me get back to you on that.
The last that I had heard, and I reported last time you asked, was a November letting of this year, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's still accurate. I just want to confirm.
So if it's a November letting, are we looking at the interim improvements happening sometime next year?
I think if we quote that in the newspaper, it would probably end up being in
23?
No, so let's see what he
Yeah,
says.
let us confirm because, yes.
John, don't quote that.
I have something.
Go ahead.
Teresa has something?
Go ahead, Teresa.
Well, a couple of things. So this Saturday, Friends of the is doing a cleanup of the Fox River, and the Rotary Club is sponsoring a cleanup location here in Montgomery. So we are meeting at 8:30 on Saturday, right there in front of Village Hall. Everyone is welcome to come. We just need you to show up at 8:30. Please wear your mask. We're going to be socially distanced. And we do need to have people register on site with us so that we know who's out there. The other thing, we have some events coming up in October that I just want to put out and make sure they're on people's radar. We are going to be doing a disabilities awareness panel in October. And we are also going to be holding a superheroes workshop for kindergarten and first graders. And that will be coming up in October or November. So stay tuned on those two events. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan?
Okay, real quick update on beautification. During COVID, we weren't meeting, but we have the last few months. But even though we weren't meeting, we're continuing to work on things. Arbor Day Park, you may recall, we brought to the board last year, and we had a plan for that. We were fortunate that our arborist, Ed Paff, talked to the Chicago Region Trees Initiative and the Mortimer Arboretum, and they held a training session here a couple of weeks ago in Montgomery, and they donated 4 trees, and those were planted in the Arbor Park. So that just gets us one step closer to completion of that park. Ed's also been working on getting costs for the pavers and also for the plantings out there. So we continue to work on that project, and as soon as he gets those costs together, then we can start going for some grant money. But in reality, we'll probably have to do it in 3 or 4 phases just because of the cost. Another project we're working on is banners. The banner project was started many years ago, and in fact, it's got to be 15 years ago. I installed the first banners in town, and there was nothing west of Orchard at that time, and most of the concentration was on the Douglas Road corridor. We've looked at that. Mark and Renee actually drove around and took an inventory of where banners were, and also drove out west to see on some of the major roads, Gordon, Concord, Lakewood Creek, that would be good fits for banners. So we're working on that. We're working on designs of banners, which we'll be bringing to the board. And what we're planning on doing is, instead of having 4 or 5 change outs every year, we're going to go to 2, one in May and one in November. So then we'll design the banners appropriately, and it'll be less time for Public Works to have to install them, and then hopefully we can reduce some costs there. And then last thing is, and then we're planning on implementing that in May 2021 with the new banner project. And then the last thing is we are going to do a Halloween judging. So Corinne will be setting something up on the website and sharing that in social media so people can nominate properties. So the last day to nominate would be October the 18th, and we'll be judging Wednesday, October the 21st. And that brings us up to speed on beautification.
Thank you. All
I
right.
have a follow-up with Dan. Dan, you and I probably should, Obviously, this year Rotary did not do the repainting of the street out front. We would be looking at doing that next year, and we are trying to figure out what would be a new design and how that's going to come. I should at least have some conversations on what beautification has in mind and then what Rotary's doing, just so we're not, doing double work, I would
Sure.
say.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, you can read future meetings. We do have executive session this evening, so we will, and then we are reporting back on closed session minutes, so we're going to head up to the room upstairs. No?
We're gonna go to the staff area.
We're gonna go to the staff area, it's pointing in the wrong direction. And then we will come back to this room to adjourn the Zoom meeting.
Yes. For
Sound good?
John and Judy, we're gonna leave this feed running, and then we will come back to it after executive session.
All right, Laura, do we need to vote to go in executive session? All right, so let's do that. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
And do I need to state for which purpose? Yes. All right, 5 ILC 120 over 2 C21. This is to basically review the minutes. All right, call the roll.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee
I'll grab
Marisak.
my tablet.
Trustee
I'm gonna
Butzinger?
log on that, so then I'll be able to pull you
Trustee
up.
Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee
need to-
Spurling.
Okay, I'm going to log in on my phone for executive
Okay.
session.
Beautiful.
And say yes.
Yes.
And Trustee Lee.
Yes.
All right, we'll return.
Application online? What's that? Application online?
It's switching from, you probably need to stop sharing that now, too.
There we go.
How do people not, oh, she has to exit this and then go
Yep.
to another Zoom link.
Gotcha. I think she was on her computer here, and then she's doing on her phone. in there.
That was fucking tricky, man, switching back and forth. You know, can't tell what. I don't.
What? For,
Somewhere. I know there's a little card. Here you go. Oh, password says guest access. Capital G, capital A. That's for the public. Yes.
I'll have 10. Wow, I'm glad I saw you sitting there, because I almost adjourned this meeting. Holy cow. All right, so I'll call the meeting back to order, and then we'll go into items for separate action, report on closed session minutes. Attorney Julian?
Okay, per the board's discussion, at this time, the only meeting minutes subject to be released are the March 9th, 2020, Section A, review of executive session minutes from the last section. So we look for a motion to approve releasing those only.
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Betzinger? Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Lee? Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
And Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
All right, it's per 6-0. Thank you. All right, with that, entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Betzinger? Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
And Trustee Lee?
And we're adjourned. Thank you.